The Montara Highlands weren't marked on most maps, and maybe that's why the forest had survived for so long. It was an emerald sea of towering firs and whispering pines, hiding creatures most had forgotten existed. One of them was an owl, small, ash-feathered, and sharper than any hunter's trap. Locals called her Ember. She was the last of her kind in those parts, a Montara twilight owl, a species believed extinct by scientists and treasured by black market collectors. And someone had found out she still existed. It began quietly. Ember had lived in the high crooks of the widow pine tree, the oldest tree in the region. Her nest sat behind a curtain of moss that glowed pale green in the moonlight. For years, she had hunted at night, navigating fog and darkness with eyes that could see the twitch of a squirrel's tail from half a mile away. She was wise, she was silent, but she wasn't invisible. One night, a group of men entered the forest, 3 poachers with rifles, traps, and tranquilizers. One wore a gold chain with a falcon talon charm, another carried a scope with night vision, the third just grinned at every sound in the dark, whispering prices for rare feathers under his breath. Ember watched them from a branch above. They didn't know it, but they had just entered her territory, and she had no intention of letting them leave with anything. The forest knew her, and Ember knew the forest better than any map. She followed them from the treetops, wings barely brushing air. When they stopped to bait traps, she swooped low, scattering dry leaves onto their tracks. When they tried to set snares, she snapped branches overhead to startle them off course. But they were relentless. They laid nets laced with pheromones. They played recordings of owl calls from speakers. They waited for 2 nights. Then one of them spotted her, a flash of white in the moonlight, a wingtip. "There she is," he hissed. Ember knew she had been seen. She vanished into the trees. But the forest was with her. Ravens cried alarm from the treetops. Squirrels broke trail markers. Even the deer moved through paths to confuse footprints. What had once been a silent woodland became a coordinated defense. But the poachers weren't fools. They narrowed the search area, dragged ladders deep into the woods, and began climbing trees. When one found the widow pine, he smiled. Jackpot. He was halfway up when Ember struck. She didn't attack his face or his arms. She went for the branch above his head, the one supporting the climbing line. Her talons snapped it clean. The man screamed as the rope loosened and he fell, tumbling into a thick patch of thorns. But he wasn't hurt enough to stop. He radioed the others. "She's here. Bring the sedatives." Ember couldn't fight forever. That night, the poachers camped close to her nest. She flew to the tallest cliff in the Montara range and waited. From there, she watched the smoke of their fire, curling like a thread into the stars. She couldn't outfight them, but maybe she could outsmart them. And she had help. A week earlier, a woman named Sarai had been tracking illegal wildlife signals in the area. A wildlife biologist with a soft spot for lost species, she had installed small, hidden cameras all across Montara. When she reviewed footage the night before, she spotted something incredible, a Montara twilight owl in full flight, wings wide like smoke in the wind. Ember. And now, watching her laptop, she saw something else, men with guns, traps, equipment far too heavy for birdwatching. Sarai didn't wait. She grabbed her boots, her ranger badge, and drove into the forest before sunrise. Ember was perched in silence when Sarai arrived. The owl didn't know the woman, but something about her presence stilled the forest. The birds didn't fly. The deer stood quiet. Even the wind paused. Sarai followed the trail cameras until she found the camp. The poachers were gone. Ember had already moved them along. But they left one trap, the biggest yet, a high canopy snare, baited with a caged mouse and scent trails sprayed over the forest. It was invisible until you were right on top of it. That's when Ember made her move. She flew low, past the trap. The poachers were hiding nearby, watching. "She's taking the bait," one whispered. But Ember wasn't going for the mouse. She veered left and soared through the net's edge, triggering the pressure pad. The entire snare launched upward and caught nothing. But the noise was enough for Sarai, who had been waiting with her camera and GPS. She stepped from the underbrush, camera in one hand, ranger badge in the other. "Game over, gentlemen."